Welcome to Tech Hub. We are recording in the Russian Tea Room, which is slightly to the left of Carnegie Hall, which reminds me of the old story when somebody walks up to me on the street and says, "Excuse me, how can I get to Carnegie Hall?" And I say, well, requires lots of practice. I was looking at an article today on the internet about Google Glass, and about 2 months ago, or January 21st to be precise, somebody was sitting on the subway, this had to be a real techno nerd, who noticed Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, who's worth like $25 billion, riding on the subway on the number 3 train, just a few blocks from here, wearing Google Glass. Now, I have as my guest Jim Ward, who is the expert and maven on everything tech. So why is it called Google Glass, not Google Glasses?
I assume that Google Glass is already so awkward to say, pronounce, that Google Glasses would be a little bit more awkward.
You're right. Glasses, asses, passes. Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
Men don't make passes at girls who wear glasses. I think Thornton Wilder, somebody said that. Jim, give us a little bit of your background so that I don't flub it.
Well, I'm a tech nerd. I work on Macintosh and Android and all sorts of stuff. I do tech support, and I'm into pro audio, and I keep up on these new developments like Google Glass. Okay,
our producer was showing me some videos, or do we call them videos anymore? I was on looking at this on the web. It was a promotional piece for Google Glass by Google, and if I'm going to play devil's advocate, it looked like you could just you're going to walk around, and it would be a very self-indulgent thing, like, this is me walking down the stairs. That's a shot of my feet. This is the sidewalk. This is me walking another step on the sidewalk. Mike Falb, our producer, mentioned that we could have had a doctor saying, this is me taking out an appendix, which would be fascinating, but probably too frightening to watch. But tell me about Google Glass. Where is it going to go? Is this going to be the next new techno thing that's going to just overtake the entire world?
I think it'll either be a resounding success, or it'll be relegated to just a few niche markets. Like Mike said, it could definitely be useful for things like a doctor being able to document his surgery, or soldiers in battle, stuff like that. There's definitely a lot of utility for it. But like you said, there's a natural outgrowth of the current internet culture that would lead to people just using it to document everything they do.
I just had a really amusing thought of it will document all the car accidents that the Google Glass wearers get into as they're not paying attention to the road.
It'll be a brave new world. And it's funny you mention that, because we're in the Russian tea room here, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Russia they have these dash cams. They have dashboard cameras in all the cars. I did not know that. Because there are a lot of insurance scams and corrupt cops, so people have these dash cams. Go to YouTube sometime and just look up Russian dash cam. You'll find some interesting stuff. But it'll probably be more like that when we have Google Glass. Everything will be documented all the time.
So is every car in Russia supplied and built with a dash cam?
I don't think so. I think it's just something that a lot of people do.
By the way, I was going to digress for a moment here. This is my first official podcast. This show had normally been produced, or in the past, on WOR Radio 710 on your dial, and it was a very enjoyable experience. But we're sitting here a couple of feet away from each other rather than me alone in the booth, and the ambiance at the Russian Tea Room is lovely. I would heartily suggest our many listeners enjoy a dining experience here.
Here.
Blini is wonderful, and the caviar is great. And we're going to have Ken Biberaj on, who's running for city council shortly, and he's also the general manager of the RTR. So now back after I've digressed. So, Jim, you're taking the easy way out on me, because I had predicted earlier that Google Glass was either going to be a huge hit or a resounding failure, or somewhere in between. But I mean, we were also discussing the Apple has got a watch in the works.
Some analyst came out and said that Apple is coming out with a watch. There's some buzz it could happen. We've also heard for years now about the Apple TV, not the Apple TV that currently exists. That's a box that goes on top of the television, but an actual Apple television. We've been hearing this from analysts for years, that Apple's about to revolutionize television. Hasn't happened yet. Maybe the watch will happen, maybe it won't. But I think at a certain point it becomes diminishing returns when you're trying to create a new niche. So as you mentioned before with Google Glass, it is a bit, dorky to have this thing, to be wearing these glasses. The user interface is interesting, actually, on Google Glass. Because, you have a heads-up display in front of you with relevant info. And the way you control it is through voice. If you tilt your head up, or if you say, OK, glass, that'll prompt it for you to give it a command. You also can touch the side of the glass by your temple, and there's a little touchpad there. So I think something like Google Glass is going to succeed or fail based on whether it looks decent enough that it doesn't make people into pariahs when they wear it. Which I think you've seen the current model, right?
Yeah, I don't think it looks as bad as a lot of people are complaining. As a wearer of glasses,
right.
I've got to wear them anyway. So
I think Eve.
I wouldn't mind.
What's
Eva Longoria?
No, close. Eve Behar. Well, who's the designer? Eve.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about like a hot babe who was wearing them or something.
No.
Eva Longoria and I have been dating ever since she split from Tony Parker. I just wanted to announce that here on the Tech Hub.
It's the source for all your Eva
all your
Longoria,
gossip
Rob
and
Taub gossip.
information. There was another thing. Okay, I have a question for you, Jim, as you are the knowledgeable person about everything tech. I had a lunch a few months ago with somebody from CBS who said that their market research is showing them in 5 years the only thing watched on a big screen are going to be sporting events. But many years ago, Bill Gates' famous New Yorker article, he said that the TV is still going to be the center of our household because everything's going to be voice activated. So we're going to have screens everywhere. Then we're just going to say whatever it's going to be called, if it's a Siri or whomever or some derivation of that, email or this or that, and you name what it is, put this show on. I'd like to watch the Golden Girls, whatever it's going to be, NFL football, New York Giants. So who's right about this? Which direction are we heading there? I'm a neophyte with all of this.
I think CBS is right to be scared because the broadcast networks are going to be in a worse situation than they are now in 10 years. But I don't think it's true that you're only going to have sports on TV. The funny thing is now, with all these devices, like with what Bill Gates said in the New Yorker article, that was years ago, right?
Yes, many years ago.
But that
like 20.
Right. That and in his book in the 90s, he also had some kind of wacky predictions, and he had to go back and revise it because he said that the internet was just a fad, stuff like that.
He said that?
Yeah, in the first edition of his book, 95 or 96. He said it was going to develop into something more. But the thing is now, the funny thing is now, what is a TV? 20 years ago, a TV you knew what a TV was. Nowadays, a TV is basically a computer monitor with an over-the-air tuner built in. So computer monitors are going to get bigger. TV is now on our phones and on our tablets and on our computers and everywhere. I think Bill Gates had it right. I think there's going to be 1 million screens all over the place. People will watch content anywhere they can find it, anywhere they can easily get it. And right now, the cable companies and the content providers aren't really doing... A lot of the content providers and a lot of the cable companies aren't really doing themselves any favors in terms of making things accessible to the consumer. They've gotten better. There's services like HBO Go, Netflix that are great, but a lot of the content providers are still stuck in the Stone Age, and they're going to be dragged kicking and screaming into the new era sooner or later.
Because the content providers, a lot of them are still people who grew up in my generation. So we're mired in this way of thinking that this show is on at this time.
Yeah.
As opposed to if you have HBO to go, you can be on the beach with your iPad.
Yep.
And you want to watch a movie or a show or something like that, and you hit it there. So that seems to far outweigh that convenience far outweighs this looking at something on a big screen.
Unquestionably, you can never compete with instant gratification. That's what the internet technology has taught us time and time again. And if you look at if you see a little kid, for instance, we babysat my niece last weekend, and we have cable, we have all the extras, Showtime, HBO, DVR, but she still wanted the iPad, and she took the iPad and then she was watching Netflix on the iPad. So that's how, a generation consumes media now. So
okay,
companies
throw
like
something
CBS,
else at you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was talking to another writer friend of mine, and if you go to robtaub.com, robtaub.com, you can see my various websites that I interact with. One of them is Huffington Post. I forgot what the percentage is, but one of the editors at Huffington told me most of their readership is on Blackberries or iPhones. So
interesting.
Graphically, their articles will look much better on an iPhone. They will source and supply pictures on the iPhone that if you're at a desktop or a laptop and you call up that same article, it won't be there.
Oh yeah, that's very common now. Yeah, the adaptive designs for websites, between tablet, phone, computer.
So they just don't care about who's going to watch it on read it on the desktop, because they think it's an insignificant enough audience that they're just going to make the mobile article look better.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that over at my website, mountvalley.net.
Plug yourself away here.
Yeah. We produce content. We produce lots of great music that nowadays our website and our music and the content we release for consumption, for download, we have to always take into account people using phones and tablets above anything else. So it's a little bit sad in a way, because when you have film producers who are shoehorning this great production into, a phone, even a phone with a Retina display, still it's not, people are going to take media wherever they can get it, and the genie's out of the bottle. There's no way it's going to go back to the way it was. But Huffington Post, it's funny you say that, because there's a lot of white space in the design. I always notice that.
Well, if you're looking at it, on a desktop or a laptop.
On a desktop, yeah, or a laptop.
It's remarkable to me because it just looks really slick on the iPhone. And the latest article I wrote, they will come up with a really wonderful photo that for the iPhone that just won't be on a desktop or a laptop, and it's remarkable to me. And so I urge people, hopefully, I'd rather it be read on the iPhone, because it makes me look better, and it's just a slicker, more professional looking article.
And it's conducive to a morning commute as well. It's easy. You have the iPhone on you at all times.
There's just another thing is, I was on the C train the other night, on Sunday night, 72nd Street in Central Park West, and they have paper signs up that say Wi-Fi. So I hit it, and sure enough, big signal. While I waited 10 minutes for the train, had Wi-Fi on the subway.
Who was that? Was that provided by MTA?
That's provided by the MTA.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, it's a mixed blessing, right? Because as we discussed in the past, that's going to be more people. I live in Brooklyn, so my subway ride from here to my house is going to be blissfully silent until I hit the bridge, and then everyone's going to be talking on their phones. So I guess it's with Wi-Fi.
But Wi-Fi, you can only get the email and send text.
No, you still do voice over IP. People will find a way to, you can FaceTime.
That's tragic.
It's all over.
As I tried to get onto the subway, because I guess this woman knew that she was going to lose the signal as the subway moved, she actually stood in the entryway to the subway and was texting away. And after I knocked her over, she wasn't able to continue texting. She was only like 79 or 80, so it wasn't that bad.
Handle it.
All right, Jimmy, well, this was great to have you on the show. We want to make this a weekly thing. Do you have any apps you want to tell us about? I want to do a segment called App of the Week. Do you have a favorite app that you use?
Yeah, I have a lot of favorite apps that are more niche, though. They're more like pro audio stuff. One of my favorite apps that I actually am a beta tester for is Animoog. It's like a Moog synthesizer, like the old analog synthesizers. It's an application that they released for the iPad and the iPhone, and it's just it's a lot of fun. You could hand it to a 4-year-old, and they can have fun with it. It's visual, and it's a synthesizer. You can create sounds with it, but the keyboard actually can be restricted to a scale. So even if you're not a musician, you can choose a scale and just go up and down the keyboard and have fun with it. I love that app. I'll give you a better app for the...
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go for a generic,
little too esoteric.
Every person of the world rap.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a required... This is a little obvious, I guess, but this is a required app if you've updated to iOS 6. Have you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I have.
So you use Google Maps on...
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, I have upgraded.
Oh,
so...
I was going to say Waze.
Waze, oh yeah. You know what? Yeah.
We were planning on doing a segment on Waze today, but we didn't have time to prep Rob.
Well, do you want to do Waze another time then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do Waze another time.
So Google Maps then is an obvious one, and also is redundant with Waze. So let me grab my iPad real quick and just see what I have.
Are we rolling here, Jim?
We're not live, are we?
No, we're not live. So it can be fixed in post.
I've got a good one. I've got a
Yes.
good one. We're going to be fixing a lot of stuff in post today, or during post, which might not be today. Yeah, there's a great video player called Azul, A-Z-U-L, for the iPad.
I have heard of it.
It's awesome. It's free, and it supports lots of different codecs and formats. It doesn't have all the limitations that the built-in video player has. It's just excellent, and it can support a lot of audio formats. So check out Azul, A-Z-U-L.
A-Z-U-L. Will do. Thank you very much, Jim Ward, for making an appearance on Tech Hub. We will see you next show.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right, we are back on the Tech Hub. My guest is Ken Biberaj, who is running for City Council in New York City. He is a Democrat on the Upper West Side, and he has my vote, although I do live on the Upper East Side, but I've been out campaigning for him. Welcome, Ken.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, last week, I wrote an article for FoxNews.com about technology and the electorate and voting, and how Obama has been, like him or dislike him, he's been masterful at using emails and the internet, and a lot of as times change and things are changing, the old world, old guard of editorials and newspapers are upset with him because he's able to ignore the press. He doesn't need them to get his message out, and this is just going to be a thing that happens serendipitously, I think. I don't think he has some big evil master plan the way a lot of Republicans say. It is growing organically, and nobody can predict how it's going to happen. So let's talk about what we can do positively, though, with technology and politics. What are you doing?
Well, look, I mean, just on the point of the president, I think they really aggressively have pushed the needle just so far in the last 2 elections. I mean, really, even in a local race like ours for city council, we constantly look at the kind of things they did. We obviously don't have a $1 billion campaign to actually build some of the data systems they did, but I mean, it's pretty impressive that they actually went to Silicon Valley and, you know, they talked to the folks at Google and they put together like real data collection metrics to really move the needle on it. But even locally for us for a small city council race, we have to kind of look at the internet and technology as a way to reach people at an affordable way and just constantly just reach out. So as an example, I was at the 72nd Street subway this morning, and I go out there with a cup of coffee to pass out flyers to promote our own campaign. And the first thing I do every single time I go out is I take a picture of my coffee and a picture of my flyer, and I post it to Instagram, which automatically connects to Twitter and Facebook. And
I
it
follow
blasts
you
it
on
out there.
Twitter.
So it's a small, simple thing, but we do it every single day. And then it gets us visually on people's Facebook. So right when they get to the office, they see Ken's already at the subway station. They see it on Twitter that we're out there. So it really gives the impression that we're just covering so much ground and we're doing so many different things.
Well, it's also got to be really cost effective. That's what I was thinking about yesterday when I saw one of your emails, because I really despised these, and actually one of the first times I didn't vote Democrat was because I got so many annoying recorded messages from Carolyn Maloney, who's my congressperson or congresswoman. Hello, I am Carolyn Maloney. It's like, enough already. I know you're not really calling me, but there's something more intimate and pleasant about getting a Twitter thing, because you could decide whether you want to look at it or not. Yeah. You have to get in there and turn your answering machine on and wait a minute to delete it. Yeah. So how are you using it? And how is it saving you money?
Well, on the money front, for a city council race in New York, the city has this great public matching program. So the city will actually give us some money, but we'll be required to have spending limits. So we can only spend $170,000 in a city council race in New York. So you can't go on the radio except for this opportunity, which we greatly appreciate, and you can't really do paid
We're doing
television.
This as a podcast.
This is a podcast, which is great. But, the traditional means that the president could go on TV and, do 100 television ads and buy up every single spot. We can't do that. So we have to, play the field a little bit. And technology allows us to do that with the weekly newsletters, standing at the subways, collecting people's data, their emails. Every single event is an opportunity to collect an email and a cell phone number.
How do you put your email list together?
So we have just organically been growing it. And we'll do a lot of big public events where we were doing fundraisers for $10 or even house parties for no money, just for the purposes to meet new people and collect their names. And every time we do an event, instead of raising more money, we ask them to bring 2-3 friends. And we've been able to exponentially grow our email list, which now allows us to post things on Facebook, on Twitter, and then blast out a newsletter. And even when we do these newsletters, which I think you get as well, we'll send something out and we'll tell people to click on the link that'll take them to the Facebook page or the Twitter page. So then hopefully they'll start following us and keep better track of it. And this is a cost-effective, real way to do it. Because like you said, if you're getting robocalls or, mail, these traditional things, you get kind of overwhelmed and it's easy to ignore them. So as a candidate, we have to find creative ways to get in front of you. And whether that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we got to come up with creative content that's visual and also just kind of interesting. And I think the president was able to do that successfully on a national level, and we're trying to do it on the Upper West Side, which is just a real microcosm. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about is supporting small businesses. So when we do things, like an Instagram or a tweet, we always try to highlight one of the local businesses on the Upper West Side to promote them as well. And then if you're lucky, what they'll do is they'll retweet you or they'll tag you on their own Facebook page. So then the people who like those businesses will then see you and then like you as well.
Well, I think I grew up in politics. My parents were involved in local, state, and national politics. And my mother was one of the campaign managers for Bobby Kennedy back in the day when he was planning a presidential run. And I remember as a really young kid riding around in a van with my father when we were doing local politics, and he had a loudspeaker with this giant old speaker attached to the roof of the van, and urging people, he would say, vote line A all the way. That's kind of what my knowledge of politics when I was 7 years old. But interestingly, you had a lot of people then that didn't really know the issues. All they knew was, oh, okay, I'll vote line A all the way, and I'll click down, which is why you had people that would vote strictly yellow dog Democrat or arch conservative Republican, and now we are exposed to more of the issues if we want to be and do our due diligence through Twitter and emails.
Absolutely.
And so it should hopefully make for more effective campaigning, although for some reason we seem to be, at least nationally, marred in a very partisan world.
Well, you understand this. I mean, there's just so much information out there that's constantly being pummeled to us. So what we've tried to recognize in our own campaign is to appreciate the convergence in technology. So to take pictures, to take video, and to find ways to intertwine all of that in every communication we're sending out to people. So we did a newsletter last week where, we had pictures that highlighted our year in review. We had some audio from an event that we had done, and we actually had a video montage that was put together about an event for Black History Month. And all of that is in one email that's coming out to you, and then we tweet it out and Facebook it out. So it's this convergence that you have to kind of, back in the day, you can stand on top of the car and yell out of the bullhorn, but you got to do so much more.
What
today.
you're doing is from my experience with following your tweets and your emails, is you're humanizing the whole political process and making people feel as if they actually know you too. So I think that's very good.
Yeah, and part of it for us too is not to always be asking for stuff. So at the national level, I think some of your frustration and my frustration has always been every email that comes in from a candidate you follow is always like, I need $5 more or $3 more or get us here, get us there. And the beauty of the system in New York is it allows us to use technology to kind of just communicate without necessarily making a hard ask all the time, which is really important because you want to build some loyalty over the course of a campaign where you're not just, hey, I need $100, I need you to make phone calls, I need you to stand at the door. Sometimes it's like, hey, we were at this great event, check it out, have you seen this new business that opened up? And the convergence of data and technology helps us get there.
I have a naive question for you, Ken.
Sure.
What happens, because I was actually one of those kids, I used to write letters to my congressman, and one of my great achievements for a friend was a college professor of mine, this is in the early 1980s, retired, and he was a political science professor, and I wrote a letter to Ronald Reagan and got this unbelievable response from, if Reagan didn't write it, whoever wrote it actually read my letter and responded in kind, and I asked for a photo of Ron and Nancy, and they sent it. And those days, it used to be also, if you wrote to the White House, my grandfather wrote a letter to FDR, and FDR sent him a presidential portrait, which hung in my grandfather's restaurant. But so can people respond to you email-wise? How do they get in touch with you? And then are you able to, do you respond back, or because of emails can you get like thousands of them?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting that you asked, because we've been out there so visibly passing out flyers at subway stations, and this literature we give out, it has a phone number, it has a mailing address, Facebook, Twitter, and email. And it's just fascinating to see, like on a morning today, for example, you'll hand out 100 pieces of literature. You'll get a couple of emails, maybe you'll get a phone call. So many of the kind of contacts back come via Twitter, where somebody will then publicly tweet me and say, well, what are you going to do about this issue?
Dear Ken, I don't like my next door neighbor's dog.
But it
I will
happens
vote
now
for
publicly.
you.
Yeah, but now it's like a more public kind of thing where they'll go on my campaign Facebook page and then I met you at the subway. What do you think about this? Or they'll tweet us directly. So we, in a small local race, we have the opportunity. I mean, I just left, our campaign office. I have a campaign manager and a social media director. And those are the two most important things in a campaign this size with such a limited budget. And, we were just talking about some of the inquiries that were coming in because you have to respond in real time. People expect it. They see, hey, if you took the time to put another picture on Facebook and Twitter, why didn't you respond to my email or my tweet? So the level of kind of necessity to respond is also escalated, which makes it harder because then all of a sudden you're getting so many inquiries coming in. So
if there
it's a challenge.
60 Minutes or somebody did a special on senators and they showed like and the president, and they have these signing machines and they make it look like a really official signature. So you're going to probably get 10 times the amount of mail on every level, so locally, nationally, statewide, because of email. So it puts an additional onus on the politician, but it does connect you more, at least, to the needs of your constituency.
Absolutely. I mean, it takes down the barriers to accessibility. Now, people genuinely feel like they can have access to us at any time they need. Either we're at a street corner, they can see where I am on Twitter, they'll walk. People will come sometimes and just show up because I posted I'm going to be at the subway station. So they're like, yeah, I didn't want to make an appointment, so you said you were going to be here, so I just showed up. And it's like, okay, fair enough. So let's have a conversation. What's on your mind? We take out some notes, and we collect their data. And it's a fantastic way to really kind of campaign and get a feel for what's going on in the neighborhood. The West Side is a very engaged community. There's a lot of important issues, but we're using technology to kind of try to make sure that everyone there feels like they can have access to us. Because if we win, we want to be able to do it at the same level. We want to be able to understand the concerns of the community.
It's a slightly older community in some parts of the West Side. I notice people still listening to 8-track players there, but I'm sure that you're going to bring them into the modern age.
You have to. It's like I said, it's a convergence, right? So you have to find a nice balance, and even in a lot of the senior centers, we'll bring in videos, we'll bring in laptops, and we'll show them some of the stuff that we've done, and we'll print out our newsletters at times, and we'll actually bring physical copies because some people don't have access to the internet, and we want to make sure that you're not neglecting large portions of the community. But you can still use the technology that goes into creating all those formats and then just distribute it physically. So, we're not leaving any stone unturned. And, you do get those phone calls too.
Well, Ken, it was great to have you on the show. I know you have an appointment to be uptown. I don't want to hold you here too long. It was very informative.
You must have seen that on Twitter.
I did. I checked it out, and I urge all of our millions of listeners to vote for Ken if you live on the Upper West Side. Is it anywhere on the Upper West Side?
So if you live between 54th Street and 109th Street, between Central Park West and the Hudson River, you could also just go to ken2013.com for more information.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, welcome to Tech Hub. I am here with Michael Provenzano from Vistar Media. So tell us about your company.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got Vistar Media started about 1.5 years ago, and we're the first ad platform for digital out-of-home media. So, layman's terms,
please explain.
That is every screen that is not a personal device. So you might see these screens in elevators owned by, say, Captivate or Wall Street Journal Office Network. You might see them in malls owned by AdSpace Media, doctors' offices, restaurants, airports, bars. So all this place-based media, what we've done is we've aggregated onto a single technology platform. So you can log into an interface, just like you might buy a banner ad. You can set up a campaign, upload a video creative, maybe one that you used on YouTube or Hulu, and set your targeting rules and hit go, and we literally will deliver these ads into all these different type of devices.
Well, I do a lot of work at Fox News, and they have the so is there a name for these things? What do we call them that are on the elevators?
Sure. Most of the time, people are referring to them as place-based screens or place-based media. They also get looped into digital out-of-home is another word for it. And out-of-home as a larger umbrella, usually people think of big billboards outdoors. So digital out-of-home and digital place-based usually refers to more of indoors versus the larger scope.
So then, do you guys create the programming for it also, or the material, or just the hardware?
No, we don't create the programming or the hardware. What we do is we work with digital ad agencies, and they might have, let's say Nike has an ad for a new shoe, and let's say they're buying ad space on YouTube or Hulu or anywhere an online presence that they're showing these video ads, maybe your mobile device. We're allowing them access to this inventory, of this physical world inventory, and just programmatically they can plug in their existing buying platforms into this and show that ad across all this media.
So then there's like multi-levels to all of this. There's
Oh,
going
yeah.
to be somebody that's going to create the actual advertisements that go on these
Yes.
these things, and then there's you guys. There's also somebody that's owning the hardware.
Yes.
So how many billions of dollars of industry is this then?
Absolutely. Just ad wise, that's out of home as a whole is a $7.5 billion industry. About $2 billion of that goes into digital out of home today.
So then where? So tell me about how you started the company and
Sure.
you know what the essence of it came from. How did you figure this out? You were on the elevator one day and you're like, wow, here's an ad space, we can do this.
Absolutely. So my business partner came from the financial world, and he was actually doing some research, like most financial guys are always doing, of different industries and opportunities. And he came across the out-of-home industry, and he came to me and he said, it's a very large industry. Have you ever looked into it? I said, no. He knew I had done work in online display advertising. Before this, I was a co-founder of Invite Media, which was the first demand-side platform for online display advertising, the banner ads you see online. And we sold to Google in June of 2010. So he said, well, it looks like there's an opportunity to do a lot of aggregation and things you guys did at Invite in a new company that's focused on this outdoor medium. So that's how he kind of looped me into it and said, let's take a look, let's dive in further, let's see the inefficiencies in this marketplace. And it was fascinating that it was a medium where it's still being bought and sold like a piece of paper. However, it's all internet-connected devices that should be bought and sold like a digital medium.
So are there ad agencies that just work specifically on this kind of product?
Actually, yes, there are. There are a few very large agencies within holding companies that are completely dedicated to out-of-home media buying. One you might be familiar with is Kinetic under WPP or PosterScope under Aegis, which is now Dentsu.
So this seems to be then it's a burgeoning market for this thing, because it's like for what my knowledge of it, Fox is one of the few places that has it. I think the Empire State Building does too. So then who goes and sells this to buildings, and how, I mean, what's the whole process?
Absolutely. So the people who actually own the screens, in the case of elevators, Captivate, they were a funded company that went out and went to owners of buildings and said, we're going to put these screens and we're going to revenue share with you based on these screens, based on the ad revenue we generate from these screens. Captivate actually was purchased by Gannett, actually owned by Gannett now. So these are essentially startups at one point in their lives. Usually, I think around 2005, 2006 is when a lot of these guys got started, VC-backed or PE-backed firms. A lot of capital always obviously required to buy screens, put them up, install them, and run these networks. So a lot of these guys did that, and they did it on a vertical, maybe office buildings, malls, bars, whatever it might be, and they really focus on those verticals. So you see these digital signage networks, as they're considered. You see these across the board, and they're essentially just very large media owners that might have thousands of screens scattered throughout the major DMAs in the United States.
So then how did you start the company? And how long have you
Definitely
been in business?
Definitely. So we started researching in the kind of middle of 2011. We really started going out to ad agencies and understanding their needs a bit more. Probably Q3 of 2011, and we really got started and started building our engineering team out in January of 2012. And that's really when we got our first round of funding, and we really started building out the product. And we released that product in July of 2012, just for general ad serving, just the ability to get these dynamic ads down to the screens. And now what we've done, in December, we released essentially the full exchange, which allows for near real-time bidding of all of these screens across all networks to digital media buyers.
How much does one of these screens cost, like, to put it in an elevator?
Great question. Elevators are probably pretty difficult. I have to ask some of the guys over at Captivate.
This is the elevator pitch.
Yeah, yeah, right. They've changed a lot over time. When these guys put up screens, like, again, 05, 06, 07, so a bit pricier than today. Today, it's so cheap to get them up. You can get if you're doing a larger screen, you might get a large LED screen for $500, and you've got to get maybe a piece of hardware that's probably an Android box, probably the same technology that's on my phone. plug that in for $100, maybe round trip, getting the installation all up, maybe $1,000 for one of those screens to get up today. Some people even leverage maybe their smaller screens. They might leverage a tablet, like an Android tablet. They'll put it on against the wall, and it actually has a camera on it, so it can track eyeballs and count the number of people who actually saw the screen versus people who just walked by it.
Yeah, so I mean you have a captive audience there. So do you actually track how many people are going to see an ad in a given day?
It's a great question. So Nielsen actually does that auditing and measuring. So they actually send people out, and then the media owners pay for this, of course, but they send people out to do those measurements. They sometimes will take a hard KPI, like let's take gyms for example. They count the number of people who have come into that gym, because you can track that obviously, and they say here's the amount of people who are around the screen. Then they do brand awareness studies of how many people even pay attention to that screen. So they take a hard number and they really reduce it down to calculate out what they consider gross venue traffic, and they take numbers like dwell time, how long is someone sitting there for. Something like a doctor's office, people are sitting there for usually quite some time. So they take those numbers in simple algebra, put it together, and they're able to say every time I show an ad, it's equivalent to this many impressions. And it's that currency that allows us to buy the medium on a CPM basis, cost per mil, which is the same way that all online advertising is essentially purchased.
So it's like the circulation department in a magazine, or which is a dying business now. So this is really like the new wave of advertising.
It's definitely picking up, and what's interesting is the media owners today, they go after these out-of-home specialists, like you inferred, like people who buy only out-of-home today. But what we're doing is helping them out and giving them an incremental revenue opportunity by going after people who buy banner ads online, email ads, they buy the video ads on YouTube, the mobile ads, and we're saying, look, this is another screen that can be accessed in a digital way. It can be accessed programmatically and near real time, with the same kind of targeting rules that you target mobile on. I know the latitude and longitude of every single screen. You can get really, really precise of the location you want to hit people in, and you know about the context of that environment. I know it's an allergist office, for example. I even can look up the kind of stores that are in a mall. So you can go to a Macy's and say, do you want to be, surrounding your stores at all time and driving people closer to that point of purchase.
So then you're going to know who the market is and who the customers are.
Yeah, I believe that mobile, just like out of home, doesn't have a cookie. Online, you can target based on cookies. You can track people online, do all the behavioral type targeting. Unfortunately, we don't have that in our medium. It'd be a little creepy if we did. So we don't
Big
have.
Brother is watching. All
Yeah,
the time.
right. So what we are able to do, though, I believe, is you can take a few variables, which is location, the time of day and the day of week, and the context around that person's location, and you really can infer the audience that's there. I know what type of people are getting into an elevator in Lower Manhattan between 6 and 9 a.m. There's very little waste if I were to show those people ads. You know who that audience is in comparison to, say, driving by a freeway on a billboard.
So what are these ads? They have to be very impactful and fast. Then, if you're
that's the agency's
do you guys
problem.
That's the problem.
No,
of the agency?
yeah, I don't do
Maybe
the
you want to be
creative.
Successful. What's the average elevator ride time?
Absolutely, it's a good question. The average
You must know that.
I should know that, but a lot of the ads, all the ads that we deal with are 15 or 30 seconds long. In elevators, 15 is more appropriate because I would imagine the average ride is under 12 seconds would be my guess. I can pull the numbers, but unfortunately,
there's always a lack of comfort on elevators. Nobody ever talks to anybody in an elevator, so you do have the captive audience.
Mike DeFranza is CEO over there, and he always tells me, he's like, it's the best. I always check with everyone, and he checks with people. Have you seen the elevator ads? He's like, oh yeah, and they list off all the brands that they see on those elevator ads. That's brand awareness.
So this is like the new billboard. Really, it's a digital billboard in
Absolutely.
a lot of ways. There was a guy in New Jersey, this goes back like 15 or 20 years ago, who was a real estate agent, and he came here from India, and he saved like all the money he had, and he bought a billboard ad for himself, and people thought he was crazy, and he then became like the most successful realtor in New Jersey. So it's one of these. the whole idea of putting something on an elevator is really interesting because, I mean, it used to just be you'd have to listen to bad music.
Absolutely.
On them. So instead, at least you can advertise a product that may really work well.
Out of home is a very high impact medium. I mean, I asked a lot of people.
Who came up with out of home?
I don't know. It was before my time. I can't fix it now. It's fascinating though. You know, I talk to just people casually about it, and I say, you know, what's the last banner ad you remember seeing? And they're like, I don't look at banner ads. Okay. What's the last TV ad you saw? Oh, I don't watch TV. I download it on my, Roku box. Like, okay. You listen to radio? No, I don't listen to radio. Okay. Those are our generations, this type where it's like, well, how do I get you? How do I advertise to you as a brand? And so I say, well, for me personally, you can get me when I'm going to a meeting, in a cab, when I'm in an office building, when I'm in the airport, going to my next meetings, right?
So is this limited strictly to elevators, or you could
no,
cabs too?
Absolutely, cabs, yeah.
And you mentioned doctors' offices.
Doctors'
as well.
offices, yeah. There's a whole list of venue types, as we call them. There's probably about 15 different segments that we go across today. So we try to keep it as the reach as large as possible.
So then, what are the expectations for the future? How big are you guys going to be?
Good question. I think one of the biggest problems most of the media owners faced when they put up all the screens, right, was making back that capital investment and building sustainable companies. And obviously the way they do that is by driving ad revenue. And I think that they had a lot of trouble filling all the inventory, selling enough of the space, mainly because individually, you're selling one network worth of screens. However, if you put them all together in one, you have much larger reach across a nationwide footprint, and you're able to get on media plans with these agencies a lot easier. Not to mention, not only is the aggregation valuable, but when you're buying in this programmatic way, we can actually layer on a lot of third-party data providers that know a lot about the locations of users and how that data changes over time, how people's behaviors change throughout the day and just throughout the months of the year. And a lot of that data was never available before. I mean, a lot of the data that people have about census data, right? That's it's over multiple years. It's not changing dynamically. Whereas as humans, we are changing a lot throughout the day in what we're doing.
So I'm curious about the technology. Is this like hardwired, or how is the stuff loaded in?
Sure.
Into the hardware, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can almost think of it as there's a screen on a wall and there's a computer connected to it. And that computer is just like the computer that you work on every day. It's connected to the internet in some way, either a Wi-Fi connection or a hardwire, or sometimes even a 4G card like your cell phone. And it's calling out to the internet to some server at all times, just like a website would be, and says, give me some content, put some things on the screen, but also give me some ads. And so we're being called to fill that ad space. So people will call us and say, hey, I've got, a blank spot in 30 minutes from now. I've got 5 blank spots in 30 minutes from now. What do you have for me? Please fill this inventory. We respond instantly with the appropriate ads to serve. And
so what else is going to happen in terms of technology with what you're doing? I mean, where else are you looking to grow and place these? What do we call them?
Yeah, these location-based media. One way to think about it. I think we're going to see two things. Our goal is to drive more revenue to these media owners, and if we're doing that, I think it allows for new people to come around and build more networks, put more screens up, because they know they can, day one, turn on these screens, point to our servers, and say, hey, help me monetize these screens, and so I can put up more and make larger networks. So I think you'll see that. You see this in China's a great example there. A very large amount of digital signage becoming a focus. Where we will expand in the near future, it's really focused this year, we've done most of the place-based media, the smaller format, 60 inches, let's say, and below. That was our original focus as a company, and get all that inventory on board and start, pushing money toward those media owners. Next is to get into cinema, so pre-roll ads before the trailers come on. So all that time before the movie, those are ads being shown. Those are usually sold to TV media buyers. Inseam and Screen Vision are the two major providers there. And the other area, of course, is billboards. So there are a few companies that manufacture the digital billboards, and the Clear Channels, the CBSs, the Lamars of the world, they can't put up more billboards. So the only thing they can do to create more inventory is to go digital. So naturally, that inventory will go digital. There's municipality laws that make it a little bit slower than what they would like. But as that goes over, we of course can dynamically serve ads into those as well because they're just internet connected
So
devices.
when are we going to hit a time where all billboards are going to become digital?
According to the Clear Channel CEO in an article I read, 10 years from now would be his future. But again, it's heavily around the municipalities. Sometimes people complain about them being too bright or obstructive for whatever reason. But the truth is, if they're too bright at night, just turn them down. It's a screen. It's not rocket science.
Is putting together a digital billboard's got to be
pretty expensive. I think.
Pricey.
I think it's in the hundreds range, hundreds of thousands. I think to get one up and everything settled. But I think the return on investment for most guys, they usually get their money back in a year. I think is fairly accurate.
I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, this has been very interesting. Thanks very much. And do you want to plug your company a little bit more, or tell us anything we should know for the future?
No.
You're going public?
No, we're about 10 today, and we're growing pretty fast in New York. All of our sales and account management, everyone is really focused on driving revenue with digital agencies today. So just heads down, kind of hiring, bringing on new people, and going to everyone on Madison Avenue.
All right. Thanks very much, Michael Provenzano.